My name is Alicia Turner. At my mom's family party in a packed Chicago community hall, she pointed at me and sneered, "What is that useless doing here?" The room erupted in laughter. Cousins, aunts, everyone treating me like a joke. She hugged her stepdaughter tight and crowed, "This is my true heir." But when I stepped back inside, her daughter froze eyes wide and choked out, "Hello, Chairman." And just like that, the room flipped. Before I get to my story, I want to know what time it is and what city you're listening in. I'm glad to know how far my story has spread. Out in the parking lot, I leaned against my car. My mom's words stung sharp as a slap. I'd built Innovatech solutions from a startup desk to a Silicon Valley giant, sat through boardroom fights and buried colleagues after failed deals. Yet here, among family, she'd branded me useless. I took a deep breath, the air thick with exhaust from nearby factories. My hands shook not from anger but from the weight of being erased. I'd learned to stay steady years ago back in Detroit, where life taught me to keep my head down and push forward. We lived in a cramped apartment off a street that smelled of oil and steel right by the auto plants. I was 13, maybe 14, when Dad James Turner sat me down at our chipped kitchen table. He worked double shifts at a parts warehouse, hands rough from lugging crates. Mom was barely around, always chasing some new scheme or man, leaving us to scrape by. Alicia, Dad said, voice low but firm, "You don't have to win every fight, but the ones you pick, fight them clean." He died a year later, heart attack gone before I could graduate high school. I folded papers at dawn, bagged groceries after school, saved every dime for a shot out of that city. Mom never cared. She'd breeze in perfume, heavy, tossing insults like spare change. "You're just like your dad, going nowhere," she'd say. I took it as fuel. By 18, I boarded a bus to Chicago with $50 and a notebook of plans. That's where Innovatech started, in a basement office with a flickering bulb. I snapped back to the present, the hall's music drifting out. My car's trunk held a box of old keepsakes, Dad's things I couldn't toss. I popped it open, digging for something to ground me. My fingers brushed a worn envelope, his handwriting faded but clear. "To Alicia, my fighter." Inside was a letter, short and plain, telling me I was enough. Tucked with it, a yellowed document caught my eye, a draft of Mom's will scribbled in her sharp hand. It listed assets, property from Dad's old savings, all marked for Crystal Powell, her stepdaughter. My name was nowhere. My stomach twisted. Mom wasn't just mocking me, she was rewriting our family to cut me out. Crystal, the one she called her true heir, was getting everything, Dad's legacy, the little he'd left behind. I'd known about Crystal's role at Innovatech, a project manager in our Chicago branch. Her name had crossed my desk last week, flagged for padded expense reports. Nothing final, but enough to warrant a hard look. I stood there, letter in hand, the night closing in. Mom's voice echoed in my head, not just from tonight, but from years of dismissal. I wasn't the kid in Detroit anymore, scraping for bus fare. I was the woman who'd built an empire, who'd signed deals that kept thousands employed. And yet, she thought she could bury me with a word. I gripped the letter tight. This wasn't over. I stayed in the shadows, my pulse still racing from the letter I'd found, Mom's plan to hand Dad's legacy to Crystal Powell. Her dismissal lingered, a bruise I couldn't shake. I spotted Crystal across the room, her blonde curls bouncing as she held court with a cluster of cousins. She was 28, all confidence, her red dress flashing under the fluorescent lights. My latest project at Innovatech, she boasted loud enough for me to catch. "Huge deal, biggest contract this quarter. I've got it locked down." Her laugh was sharp, and the cousins nodded, impressed, passing her another drink. My jaw tightened. Crystal's name had landed on my desk last week, tied to a report about padded expense claims, fake hotel receipts, inflated travel costs. Nothing proven yet, but the numbers didn't add up. She didn't know I was the one reviewing her file, the chairman she'd never met. I edged closer, keeping my face blank, blending into the chatter of aunts and uncles swapping old stories. Then Aunt Lori Bennett slipped beside me, her gray hair tucked in a neat bun, her voice a low whisper. Alicia, I heard something you need to know. She glanced around, making sure no one was listening. Your mom, Denise Clark. She's been meeting with a lawyer. She's rewriting her will, leaving everything to Crystal. The house your dad's saving's all of it. You're out. My breath caught. The letter in my car wasn't a mistake, it was real. Mom wasn't just mocking me. She was erasing me from our family's future. Aunt Lori's eyes softened, her hand brushing my arm. I tried to talk her out of it, but she says Crystal's the one who deserves it. I knotted my throat tight and kept my gaze on Crystal. She was still talking, oblivious, tossing out details about her big deal. The client loves me, she said, smirking. I worked the numbers just right. I knew those numbers. Her report had claimed thousands in expenses for a trip that never happened. My hands curled into fists, but I stayed still, years of boardroom discipline holding me steady. The cousins around Crystal laughed, one clapping her shoulder. You're going places, girl, he said. Another chimed in. Denise must be proud. I caught their glances my way, quick and pitying, like I was the outsider who didn't belong. Mom had set the stage and they were playing along. I wanted to step forward, call Crystal out right there, but that wasn't the plan. Dad's words, fight clean, echoed from years ago, and I wasn't about to lose my edge. Not yet. Aunt Lori squeezed my hand, her voice barely audible. You're stronger than this, Alicia. Don't let her win. I met her eyes, gave a small nod, but I'd heard enough. Mom's will, Crystal's lies, they were building a house of cards, and I wasn't going to let it stand. I slipped closer to the crowd. The sting of Mom's words didn't fade, but I kept my face steady, scanning the room. Cousins whispered, their eyes sliding past me like I was a stranger at my own family's party. They'd bought her story. Denise Clark had painted me as nothing, while her stepdaughter, Crystal Powell, was the shining heir. I caught sight of Crystal weaving through the crowd, her red dress catching the light, a plastic cup of beer in hand. She was still riding the high of Mom's praise, oblivious to the truth I'd just learned about the will. I thought about the company I'd built, Innovatech Solutions, pulled through the 2008 crash when startups were folding left and right. I'd signed deals under pressure that would have broken most, sat up nights balancing books to keep thousands employed. That was my legacy, not some scrap of paper Mom thought she could rewrite. A group of aunts near the buffet nudged each other, their laughter sharp-aimed my way. She's just here for the free food, one muttered loud enough to carry. Another nodded, smirking. Denise says she's nobody special. My chest tightened, but I didn't flinch. Years of facing down boardroom skeptics had taught me to stand tall when the room turned cold. Then Crystal spotted me. She sauntered over, her smile too wide, like she was doing me a favor. Hey, you're Alicia. Right, she said, her voice dripping with fake warmth. She didn't know who I was, not really. You must love these family things. I'm kind of a big deal at Innovatech, you know. Just closed a huge contract, handled the numbers like a pro. Her words hung there, bold and careless. I knew that contract. It was the one with the padded expenses, fake receipts for client dinners that never happened. Numbers she'd handled to skim thousands. My eyes narrowed, but I kept my tone even. Sounds impressive, I said, letting her dig deeper. Oh, it is, Crystal went on, tossing her hair. The client's eating out of my hand. I know how to work a deal, make things look just right. She winked like we were sharing a secret. The irony hit hard. She was bragging about fraud to the chairman who'd seen her report. I almost laughed, but I held it in, my mind racing. She had no idea the ground was crumbling under her. A cousin nearby overheard, raising his cup. That's our girl, he said, grinning. Crystal's got the family name covered. The others nodded their approval, loud, their glances at me laced with pity. They didn't know the half of it. Crystal's smugness. Mom's lies, it was all a house of cards, and I was starting to see how to bring it down. I thought of Dad, his voice steady in my memory, telling me to fight clean. I wasn't going to shout, or make a scene not yet. But Crystal's words, her careless slip about the deal, had just handed me a match. This wasn't just about Mom's will anymore. It was about truth. I turned away, my resolve hardening. I pulled out my phone, my hands steady despite the fire in my chest. Crystal Powell's smug words, her boast about fudging numbers mixed with Mom's sneer, and the cousin's laughter, a chorus that tried to drown me. But I wasn't the kid who folded under pressure anymore. I'd built innovative solutions through market crashes and hostile takeovers. This wasn't a boardroom, but the stakes felt just as high. I scrolled to Gloria Simmons, my old mentor from the early days at Innovatech. She was 60 sharp as ever, a woman who'd clawed her way to VP before retiring. I hit call. She answered on the first ring, her voice gravelly but warm. "Alicia, it's late. You okay? Mom just called me useless in front of everyone." I said, my voice low. "Her stepdaughter Crystal thinks she's untouchable, bragging about deals I know are dirty. And Mom's rewriting Dad's legacy to give her everything." Gloria didn't hesitate. "Sounds like my old boss in '98. He called me a nobody in a board meeting, thought I'd never fight back. I filed a lawsuit, small, clean, just enough to make him sweat. Cost him his bonus and his pride." "You don't have to scream, Alicia. Stand firm, show the truth. If Crystal's playing dirty, you've got the receipts." Her words landed like a lifeline. I thought of Dad James Turner, his voice steady, in that Detroit kitchen telling me to fight clean. Mom Denise Clark had spent years dismissing me, and now Crystal was following her lead, thinking she could skate by with padded expenses. But I'd seen the reports. I had the power to set things right. "I don't want to humiliate them," I said, pacing the asphalt. "But I can't let this slide." "Then don't," Gloria replied. "You're the chairman. You earned that chair. Walk in there and let them see who you are. No shouting, no games, just the truth. If Crystal's crossed a line, handle it by the book. Lawsuits aren't revenge, they're accountability." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "Thanks, Gloria." The call ended and I stood still, the night air cool against my skin. The party's music thumped faintly, a reminder of the crowd waiting inside. I thought of the company I'd built, the sleepless nights balancing budgets to save jobs, the deals I'd closed when no one believed I could. Mom's will, Crystal's lies, they didn't define me. My work did. I opened my car's trunk where my work bag sat untouched from a board meeting that morning. Inside was the suit I'd worn, black tailored with the Innovatech pin on the lapel, a small silver emblem of everything I'd earned. I slipped off my casual jacket, pulled on the blazer, and straightened the pin. My fingers brushed the crisp shirt, smoothing it flat. I adjusted my tie, the knot tight and precise, each movement grounding me. The suit wasn't just fabric. It was armor-proof of every step I'd taken from that Detroit apartment to the top. I glanced at my reflection in the car window. The woman staring back wasn't the girl Mom had written off. She was Alicia Turner, chairman, who'd fought battles bigger than a family party. Gloria's words echoed, "Stand firm. Dad's to fight clean." I didn't need to raise my voice or throw punches. The truth was enough, and I was ready to let it speak. Crystal's careless bragging, Mom's attempt to erase me, they'd built their own trap. I closed the trunk, my steps firm against the pavement. The hall loomed ahead, its lights bright, the crowd unaware of what was coming. I wasn't here to make a scene. I was here to stand in what I'd built, what no one could take away. I stepped toward the hall. The hall's doors swung open as I stepped inside, my suit, sharp, the Innovatech pin on my lapel, gleaming under the Chicago Community Center's lights. The crowd's chatter hit me like a wave, plates clinking, kids laughing, the pop music thumping from the DJ's speakers. I kept my head high, my steps even, ignoring the glances from cousins who'd laughed at Mom's sneer earlier. Her words, useless, echoed faintly, but I pushed them down. I wasn't here to beg for their approval. I was here to stand in what I'd built. I moved toward the center, eyes scanning the room. Mom Denise Clark stood near the buffet, her arm around Crystal Powell, her stepdaughter still basking in the glow of being called the true heir. Crystal's red dress flashed as she chatted with an uncle, her plastic cup of beer tilted in her hand. She hadn't seen me yet, didn't know the woman in the suit was the chairman she'd been dodging in her expense reports. I stopped near a table, letting the crowd part around me. A cousin whispered, "Who's that?" Another nudged him, "Alicia. I think Denise's kid." Their voices dropped, unsure, as my presence registered. I didn't speak, didn't need to. The suit, the pin, the way I carried myself, it was enough to make heads turn. Then Crystal looked up. Her eyes locked on mine and her smile froze. The cup in her hand trembled, beer sloshing over the rim, staining her dress. "Hello, Chairman." She choked out, her voice cracking loud enough to cut through the music. The room went dead silent. The DJ fumbled the track, skipping then stopping. Every eye swung to me, then to her. Crystal's face drained white, her hand shaking so hard the cup slipped, splashing beer across her skirt. She stumbled back, the wet patch spreading, her confidence crumbling. "Oh my God," she stammered. I didn't know." Her uncle stepped away, his grin gone. Aunts who'd laughed earlier froze, their forks halfway to their mouths. Whispers started low and urgent. "Chairman of Innovatech," one cousin muttered. "That's Alicia," another hissed. "Crystal works for her." The air shifted heavy with realization. They'd heard Crystal's bragging her big deal, her handled numbers, and now they saw me, the woman who'd seen her padded receipts, the fake expenses she thought she'd hidden. I stood still, my gaze steady on Crystal. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't smirk. "We'll handle business at the office," I said, my tone calm but cold. "Bring your reports, Crystal. All of them." Her lips parted, but no words came. She nodded, jerky and quick, her eyes darting to Mom. Denise's arm dropped from Crystal's shoulder, her face stiff, lips pressed tight. She tried to laugh it off, a weak chuckle, but it died in the silence. Aunt Lori Bennett, standing nearby, started clapping, slow and deliberate. "Alicia," she called, her voice thick with pride. Others joined, hesitant at first, then louder. An uncle I barely knew nodded, his eyes wide. "Didn't know you ran the show," he said. The whispers grew about Crystal's deals, the expenses she'd fudged, the reports I'd seen. "She's in trouble," someone murmured. "Big trouble." The crowd's mood flipped, their pity for me turning to shock at Crystal's fall. Mom's eyes narrowed, but she stayed quiet, her hands twisting her napkin. I didn't linger. I'd made my point. The truth was out, raw and undeniable, without a single shout. Crystal's spilled beer, her trembling hands, the room's stunned silence. It was louder than any speech I could have given. I turned, my suit crisp against the chaos, and headed for the exit. The crowd parted, their murmurs following me, some clapping, some just staring. Mom didn't move. Neither did Crystal. They stood frozen, caught in the mess they'd made. I didn't look back. I'd come to this party for Aunt Lori, for the family I thought might see me. They saw me now, not as Denise's useless kid, but as Alicia Turner, chairman, the one who held the cards. I walked out, the whispers fading. The weight of Mom's sneer and Crystal's spilled beer didn't follow me out here. I'd stood in my truth. Let the room see who I was, Alicia Turner, chairman of Innovatech Solutions, not the nobody Denise Clark tried to paint me as. I didn't need their applause or their pity. I needed to move forward. I slid into my car, the leather cool against my suit, and pulled out my phone. Mom's number flashed up, Denise Clark, a name I'd once tied to family, now just a contact. I blocked it. My thumb steady, no hesitation. Crystal Powell's number came next. Her smug voice from the party, her fake receipts on my desk. Blocked. No texts, no calls, no second chances. I'd spent years giving Mom the benefit of the doubt, hoping she'd see me. She never did. Crystal followed her lead, thinking she could skate by with lies. I was done. Back at Innovatech's Chicago office the next week, I sat at my desk, the city skyline sharp through the window. Crystal's expense report was in front of me, flagged for thousands in fake charges, hotel stays that didn't happen, client dinners she'd invented. I'd seen it coming, heard her brag about handling numbers at the party. HR moved fast. They called her in, laid out the evidence, and gave her 2 days to explain. She couldn't. The termination letter was signed by noon, my pen steady, no emotion. It wasn't personal, it was the job. Innovatech didn't run on favoritism. It ran on accountability. Crystal didn't take it quietly. A month later, she filed a wrongful termination claim, dragging my name into it, saying I'd targeted her for family reasons. The lawyer's email landed in my inbox full of bluster, but I wasn't worried. The evidence, her padded receipts, email trails, audit logs, was ironclad. The case went to a labor board hearing, quick and clean, like Gloria had taught me. Crystal lost. The judge didn't blink, citing clear documentation. In America, the law doesn't bend for excuses when the numbers don't lie. Her resume took the hit, background checks would flag the fraud, making her next job hunt a slog. Mom's fallout was quieter but sharper. The family's Facebook group, where aunts and cousins posted potluck plans and birthday pics, turned on her. Aunt Lori Bennett started it, sharing a post about the party, about me running Innovatech. Alicia's the real deal, she wrote. The comments piled up, uncles praising my work, cousins asking why Denise had lied. Someone tagged Mom, asking why she'd called me useless. She tried to reply a long ramble about misunderstandings, but it flopped. Relatives stopped inviting her to dinners, unfollowed her posts. In a Midwestern family like ours, where group chats and Sunday BBQs tie everyone together, that silence was louder than any fight. I didn't gloat. I didn't post about it or call Aunt Lori to stir the pot. I went back to work, board meetings, late nights, new contracts. The company was my anchor, the place I'd built when family wasn't enough. I thought of Dad James Turner, his words about fighting clean. He'd be proud, not because I'd won, but because I'd stood firm without sinking to Mom's level. Crystal's lies. Mom's will, they'd tried to erase me, but I'd written my own story long ago. Months passed, the city's rhythm steady around me. I drove out to a quiet park one weekend, the grass clipped neat, the air carrying a hint of lake breeze. I stood alone, thinking of the girl in Detroit who'd saved for a bus ticket, who'd fought her way to the top. Mom's words. Crystal's schemes. They were noise, not truth. My worth wasn't in their approval or their legacy. It was in the work I'd done, the lives I'd touched, the company I'd built from nothing. If you're carrying words that cut you down from family or anyone else, let them go. Cut the ties that hurt, not to destroy, but to free yourself. Your value isn't in what they say, it's in what you do day after day, clean and steady. Stand in that, and no one can take it away. I drove on, the city fading behind me.